There is a sentence that often appears in discussions about cryptocurrency, either in conferences, online forums, or casual conversations between friends trying to understand this new digital world. Blockchain is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is blockchain. At first glance, it sounds logical, almost like these two terms are inseparable twins. But the truth is more nuanced. Blockchain is not Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is not blockchain. Yet, in a strangely poetic way, Bitcoin stands as the most successful proof that blockchain technology can work, thrive, and challenge the foundations of how we perceive money, trust, and digital ownership. To understand why these two concepts are connected but fundamentally different, we must rewind the clock to 2008, a year that shaped the modern financial landscape in ways we still feel today. The world was going through a global financial crisis. Banks collapsed, trust eroded, and billions of dollars vanished as if soaked into the cracks of a broken system. It was in the middle of this chaos, where trust in traditional finance reached a historical low, that a person or group under the mysterious name Satoshi Nakamoto published a 9-page white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It proposed something audacious, a form of money that required no bank, no central authority, no gatekeeper, a network where strangers could transact with strangers securely, transparently, and without permission. But Bitcoin needed more than an idea. It needed a system reliable enough to function without trust. That system was blockchain. Blockchain was the invisible architecture, the backbone and infrastructure that allowed Bitcoin to exist in the real world, interact with millions of users, and keep every transaction permanently recorded without relying on a central server. Bitcoin was the first implementation of blockchain technology, not the technology itself, but the spark that ignited everything that came after. And that is where our story begins. When you introduce someone new to crypto, it's normal to see confusion in their eyes. Many think blockchain is simply the software that runs Bitcoin, like a game engine behind a video game. Nothing more. Others believe blockchain is just a bigger philosophical umbrella under which Bitcoin sits comfortably as one of many applications. Both views hold some truth, but the real picture is richer, deeper, and far more fascinating. Bitcoin is not merely an application running on blockchain. Bitcoin is the proof of life for blockchain, the living organism that demonstrates blockchain's security, resilience, and potential better than any theoretical explanation ever could. Imagine explaining what the internet is without any website existing yet. You could talk about networks, servers, packets of data bouncing across the globe, but no one would feel it. No one would understand why it matters. It was not until people began using email, browsing the first websites, shopping online, and streaming videos that the internet became more than an abstract concept. Bitcoin plays this exact role for blockchain. In other words, blockchain is the invention, but Bitcoin is the experience. Yet even now, more than 15 years since Bitcoin was introduced, the misunderstanding remains widespread. When the price rises, headlines shout blockchain is booming. When it falls, they declare blockchain is dead. But blockchain is not a financial market, not a coin, not something that lives or dies based on price charts. Blockchain is a technological structure, a new way of storing data, ensuring trust without intermediaries, and organizing human cooperation digitally. Bitcoin simply became the first passenger to ride on this infrastructure, and it did so with such spectacular success that it became the symbol of the entire movement. In this script, we will explore how blockchain and Bitcoin relate to each other like a foundation and a monument. We will look at the origin of blockchain, the birth and evolution of Bitcoin, and the reasons why Bitcoin became the most successful proof of blockchain instead of any other project. We will also travel beyond Bitcoin to observe how blockchain expanded into countless directions: smart contracts, decentralized finance, NFTs, enterprise solutions, and more. Finally, we will return to the beginning with personal reflections. Why Bitcoin matters, not only as technology but as an idea, and why understanding the difference between blockchain and Bitcoin is essential to understanding the future. Before we move forward, let's pause and appreciate something subtle but important. If Bitcoin had failed in its early years, if hackers broke it, if adoption never took off, if the network collapsed under economic pressure, blockchain today might be nothing more than a theoretical concept buried in academic papers. It was Bitcoin's survival through bull markets and brutal crashes, through regulatory battles and constant skepticism, that proved blockchain could support something valuable, secure, and global. Bitcoin put blockchain on the map. Blockchain gave Bitcoin a place to exist. They need each other, but they are not each other. And now, as we step into the next part of our journey, we will dive into the heart of blockchain itself. What exactly is this chain of blocks that millions talk about? Why do people claim it eliminates trust? Why does it matter for industries far beyond finance? If someone were to strip away all market charts, price speculation, trading hype, and media sensationalism, what would remain at the core of this entire crypto universe is simply a technology, a structure, a design that attempts to solve one of the oldest problems in human civilization. How do we create trust between people who do not know each other? Blockchain, at its essence, is a technological answer to that question. But to understand it, we cannot jump straight into dense technical terms. Instead, let's begin with something simple and intuitive. Imagine a notebook. Every time two people exchange something, money, information, property, you write the details into that notebook. The notebook is public, so everyone can see what's inside. No one can erase anything once it's written. You only add new pages as time moves forward. If someone tries to cheat, everyone else who owns a copy of this notebook will immediately spot the discrepancy, and the fraud attempt will be rejected. Now expand this notebook to a global scale. Thousands of computers, synchronized, verifying every new entry collectively. That is blockchain in its simplest metaphor, a distributed public ledger. But blockchain is more than just a ledger. It is trust encoded in mathematics. No single person controls the notebook. No government, no CEO, no bank manager. Instead, rules are baked into the system itself. These rules ensure that once information enters the chain, it becomes almost impossible to modify without an overwhelming force. Each block of data is linked cryptographically to the previous one, forming a chain where altering one link means altering them all. This security model mirrors something profound. Rather than relying on trust in humans, blockchain creates trust through cryptography, consensus algorithms, and economic incentives. In traditional systems, we trust people because we assume they follow laws. We trust banks to store our money, governments to stabilize currencies, and institutions to keep records correct. But history has shown repeatedly that human systems are fragile. Records can be altered, data can be forged, money can be inflated, trust can be broken. Blockchain suggests an alternative world where trust does not rely on authority, but on rules that cannot be bribed, intimidated, or corrupted. If traditional systems say, trust us, blockchain says, verify it yourself. This shift is monumental. It introduces a model where data becomes transparent and verifiable, not because an institution guarantees it, but because the network itself enforces it. Everyone can see the ledger. Everyone participates in validating it. And no one can secretly rewrite history. This characteristic makes blockchain uniquely valuable for areas where trust is paramount: finance, identity, supply chains, public records, even voting systems. Yet, blockchain is not magic. It does not replace all databases, nor should it. Many people misunderstand blockchain as a universal solution. They attach it to every concept: blockchain for laundry, blockchain for cafes, blockchain for social networks, forgetting that technology must serve a purpose, not just a trend. Blockchain shines where transparency, immutability, and decentralization provide real benefits. It is less efficient than centralized databases, slower by design, more expensive to maintain. But in exchange, it provides something traditional systems cannot: a ledger that nobody owns, yet everyone trusts. We often hear about the decentralized nature of blockchain. But what does decentralization truly mean? It means there is no single point of failure. If one server goes down, the system continues because thousands of others keep running. If one participant tries to cheat, the network rejects the invalid change. Decentralization is resilience, the kind of resilience that allowed Bitcoin to operate continuously for over a decade without stopping. Not one day offline, not even 1 hour. Consensus is another pillar. Without a central authority deciding what transaction is valid, the network must agree collectively. Mechanisms like proof of work or proof of stake help the system choose the next block fairly. In proof of work, miners compete to solve cryptographic puzzles using computing power. and the winner earns the right to add the next block. This process is energy demanding, often criticized, yet incredibly secure. Proof of stake works differently, relying on economic stake instead of computational work. Both serve the same purpose, to maintain integrity without a central controller. And there's one more detail that makes blockchain revolutionary: its ability to record not just currency, but any form of digital truth. Property ownership, medical records, academic certificates, product origins, creative rights, all can live on a blockchain. This means we can verify whether a piece of art is authentic, track whether a diamond is ethically sourced, or ensure a piece of land has never been sold twice. For a world increasingly digital, blockchain offers a backbone of trust. However, for all its potential, blockchain remained mostly a theoretical concept before Bitcoin. Researchers discussed it, technologists admired it, but no one had successfully deployed it at scale in the real world. It was Bitcoin that gave blockchain its first heartbeat, the first application to demonstrate how a trustless system can hold real economic value without collapsing. If blockchain were an engine, Bitcoin was the first car built with it. Without that car driving on roads, the engine might have remained forever in a research lab. This brings us to the heart of our exploration. Bitcoin did not invent blockchain, but it proved blockchain works, not on paper, not in simulation. In practice, under pressure, exposed to hackers, governments, markets, hype, and doubt. Blockchain gave Bitcoin transparency, immutability, decentralization. Bitcoin gave blockchain purpose, scale, and belief. As we move forward in the next part, we will step directly into the story of Bitcoin itself. We will look at how a white paper written by an anonymous figure became a global currency, how it went from being worth pennies to becoming digital gold, and how it turned from an experiment into a paradigm shift. Blockchain is the foundation. Bitcoin is the proof. And now we unfold the story of that proof. When Bitcoin was born, it wasn't glamorous. There were no billion-dollar exchanges, no crypto conferences, no institutional funds, no influencers shouting about Lambos and moonshots. There was just a cryptography mailing list, a PDF document, and a few curious minds intrigued by the idea of digital money without a banker. Bitcoin began not as a financial revolution, but as a small experiment, fragile, uncertain, almost laughable to those who believed money required authority to exist. In the earliest days, Bitcoin was mined on home computers using CPUs, barely consuming more energy than an idle laptop. Each block rewarded miners with 50 BTC, though at the time it was worth effectively nothing. A few hobbyists ran nodes simply because they admired the elegance of the protocol. They weren't chasing wealth, they were witnessing an invention. It was like being present when the first fire was lit or the first wheel rolled. Most of the world ignored it, but those who stayed saw something more, an alternative to the financial structure humanity had followed for centuries. The power of Bitcoin lies not in its code alone, but in its design philosophy. Its supply is capped at 21 million coins, no more, no less. No committee can wake up one morning and decide to print 1 trillion new coins. Scarcity is built into Bitcoin's DNA. This simple rule changed everything because money with programmed scarcity behaves differently from money in the hands of governments. Fiat currencies inflate over time. Bitcoin deflates. Dollars rely on promises. Bitcoin relies on mathematics. In a world where trust was shaken, Bitcoin offered certainty. Still, in those early years, few understood its potential. One of the first recorded commercial transactions using Bitcoin was a purchase of 2 pizzas for 10,000 BTC. At the time, it seemed fair. Today, those coins would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. People laugh at the pizza story, but it marks a historical moment. The day Bitcoin stepped out of theory and into the real economy. The day digital money bought physical food. That transaction was proof that Bitcoin had value, not because an authority declared it so, but because 2 individuals agreed it did. That was revolutionary. As more people joined the network, something extraordinary happened. Bitcoin became stronger. In traditional systems, expansion demands more control, more servers, more centralization. But Bitcoin thrived through decentralization. More miners meant more security. More nodes meant more transparency. More users meant more liquidity. A feedback loop emerged where adoption fortified the system instead of stressing it. No central server existed to attack. No headquarters to shut down. The network was everywhere and nowhere. belonging to everyone yet owned by no one. Critics tried to dismiss it. They called it a bubble, a scam, a tool for criminals. Governments attempted to ban it. Banks ignored it, then fought it, then slowly began to study it. Through every challenge, Bitcoin survived. It was hacked at every angle, probed relentlessly, but the protocol itself has never been breached. Exchanges were hacked, wallets were stolen, but Bitcoin's core remained untouched. Like a fortress built with cryptographic stone, it proved remarkably resilient. With time, Bitcoin evolved in perception. It began as electronic cash, then grew into a store of value, digital gold. People realized Bitcoin might never replace everyday payments in its raw form, but it didn't need to. Gold isn't used to buy coffee, yet it anchors global wealth. Bitcoin, like gold, is scarce, divisible, and immune to political manipulation. Unlike gold, it is weightless, borderless, and can move across the world in minutes. A single string of numbers, 12 or 24 words, can represent a fortune carried in the mind of one person. No gatekeeper required. That level of autonomy is unprecedented in human history. Money always came with dependency. Banks could freeze accounts. Governments could restrict transfers. Gold was heavy, trackable, subject to confiscation. Bitcoin broke those chains. It offered financial sovereignty, the idea that an individual could own value without permission. For some, this was a philosophical awakening. For others, especially in countries with hyperinflation or capital controls, it was a lifeline. Bitcoin also introduced something subtle yet profound. Proof-of-work mining aligned incentives for network security. Miners spent real energy and resources to compete for block rewards. This cost created immutability. To rewrite Bitcoin's history, one would need to overpower the majority of global mining energy, an almost impossible task economically. This makes Bitcoin not just secure, but unforgeable. Value backed by energy, trust backed by physics. No other blockchain-based project has achieved the same level of adoption, resilience, and cultural impact. Thousands of cryptocurrencies emerged after Bitcoin, each claiming to be faster, smarter, more scalable. Many brought legitimate innovations. Others were built purely on speculation. Some flourished temporarily before fading into obscurity. Yet Bitcoin remained, slow by design, simple in function, unchanging in its core principles. Its minimalism is its strength. Where others chase complexity, Bitcoin protects purity. Over more than a decade, Bitcoin never asked for trust, it earned it. It didn't market itself, it proved itself block after block. While stock markets slept, Bitcoin kept running. While banks closed for holidays, Bitcoin remained open. No CEO apologized during crises. No one printed bailout tokens. Bitcoin doesn't need rescue. It simply continues, indifferent to praise or criticism. And this persistence is why Bitcoin is the greatest demonstration of blockchain ever created. It is a living organism powered by mathematics and belief. Blockchain gave it form. The people gave it value. Together, they formed a network too decentralized to kill, too elegant to ignore. Bitcoin is no longer just code. It is culture. It is philosophy. It is a movement. Yet Bitcoin is not the limit of blockchain. It is the beginning. After Bitcoin proved blockchain could survive in the wild, innovators began to imagine what else this technology could do. Could it power smart contracts? Could it rebuild finance? Could it govern organizations? Could it track goods, secure identity, protect privacy? These questions opened the door to a new era, one where blockchain stepped beyond currency and into a universe of applications. But before we explore those new worlds, we must recognize Bitcoin for what it is, the first proof of concept that became a global phenomenon. Bitcoin showed that decentralization is not a theory. It works. If we imagine blockchain as a groundbreaking invention, like electricity, the printing press, or the internet, then Bitcoin is the first product that harnessed its power so effectively that it transformed how the world sees it. Blockchain could have existed in academic research forever. Developers might have continued building prototypes, simulations, theories. But without Bitcoin, would anyone outside cryptography circles have cared? Would billions of dollars, millions of users, and global infrastructure have formed around the idea of decentralization? Perhaps eventually, but not like this. Bitcoin accelerated belief. Blockchain is fundamentally a tool. It is a structure for recording data in a tamper-proof, decentralized way. It does not require Bitcoin to exist. In fact, one could deploy a private blockchain inside a company to track supply chains or medical records without ever touching cryptocurrency. IBM, VChain, Hyperledger, and many others have done exactly that. These blockchains serve logistical problems, identity verification, and business needs where transparency matters. They function without a native coin and without open participation from the public. According to theory, blockchain stands on its own, but theory without proof is fragile. Ideas need a real-world test: pressure, time, stress. Bitcoin became that stress test, not because it was built to showcase blockchain, but because people valued what Bitcoin offered: freedom from authority, digital scarcity, self-sovereign money. The demand for Bitcoin indirectly proved that blockchain could handle something precious, something people were willing to fight for, invest in, and defend. Consider this: Bitcoin has operated continuously since 2009 without downtime. Not one day offline. Not a single moment when the chain stopped. No CEO called emergency meetings when markets crashed. No government bailout occurred when miners left due to low price. Bitcoin simply adjusted, rebalanced, and continued. During bull markets and bear markets, global crises, and regulatory battles, the chain kept producing blocks, every 10 minutes on average, like heartbeat after heartbeat. For a system with no leader, no company, no headquarters, this is astonishing. Blockchain wasn't just discussed in textbooks, it was alive, tested by adversaries daily. Hackers spent years attempting to break Bitcoin's cryptographic armor. If they succeeded, they could steal billions. Yet no attack has ever altered Bitcoin's core chain. Exchanges were hacked, but Bitcoin itself remained intact. Wallets were stolen, but the protocol held firm. Unlike tradition where a bank collapses and customers lose funds, Bitcoin's resilience stems from decentralization. No single point of failure, no door to force open. For blockchain believers, Bitcoin is proof not because it is theoretically secure, but because real-world attempts to destroy it have failed. Proof through survival, proof through adoption, proof through time. Other blockchains followed: Ethereum, Binance Chain, Solana, and countless others. Many improved scalability, flexibility, or programmability. Smart contracts allowed decentralized applications to flourish. Suddenly, blockchain became a canvas where anyone could build financial products, games, identity systems, art marketplaces, autonomous organizations. This explosion of innovation often leads people to say blockchain is bigger than Bitcoin. And they are right. Blockchain extends far beyond money, yet innovation alone does not equal proof. Thousands of projects launched, but many disappeared, some due to technical limitations, others due to lack of adoption, and many due to speculation-driven hype. Communities rose and fell. Tokens surged and crashed. Where Bitcoin stands steady like granite, newer projects often behave like waves. Exciting, fast, but unstable. Bitcoin might not process thousands of transactions per second. It might not host smart contracts natively, but it does one thing better than anyone else: store value and operate securely without central control. In a world where complexity often leads to vulnerability, Bitcoin's minimalism is its greatest armor. This is why, when people say blockchain can exist without Bitcoin, they're correct in theory. But when they ask whether blockchain would have reached global consciousness without Bitcoin blazing the trail, the answer becomes more complicated. Had Bitcoin failed in its first 5 years, whether from a critical flaw, lack of adoption, or loss of interest, blockchain might have been seen as a promising but impractical idea. Instead, Bitcoin's success forced the world to pay attention. Governments began drafting regulations. Universities added blockchain courses. Corporations allocated research funds. Nations considered digital currencies. None of this happened because blockchain sounded smart. It happened because Bitcoin worked. Let's imagine an alternative world. Suppose blockchain emerged as an enterprise tool before Bitcoin. Companies use it for supply chains. Hospitals use it for patient records. Voting systems adopt it to prevent fraud. Would people care emotionally? Would a movement form? Would individuals feel empowered? Or would blockchain remain invisible, quietly integrated into the background of corporate systems? It might still be important, but it would not inspire passion like Bitcoin does. Bitcoin was born from rebellion, not enterprise management. It challenged the status quo. It questioned institutions, not assisted them. This friction is why people noticed. Bitcoin didn't sell blockchain, it demonstrated it. In technology history, real adoption rarely begins with neutral use cases. The internet grew not because of academic networks, but because people wanted email, social connection, entertainment. Smartphones exploded not because phones needed to check calendars, but because people wanted photos, apps, music. Humans adopt technology emotionally first, rationally later. Bitcoin provided that emotional spark. Blockchain became interesting because Bitcoin gave it life. And so we reach a key truth. Blockchain does not equal Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not equal blockchain. But Bitcoin is the strongest evidence that blockchain is viable at global scale. Bitcoin is what happens when blockchain is used not for internal record keeping, but for something millions of people desire: freedom, ownership, sound money. Bitcoin turned blockchain from concept into culture. Now that blockchain has proven itself, innovators have expanded it into new territories. Some promising, some chaotic, some disastrous, some revolutionary. In the next part, we explore that expansion. NFTs, DeFi, altcoins, smart contracts, enterprise blockchains, how they emerged, what they bring, and why most still cannot match Bitcoin's trust. Because if Bitcoin is the lighthouse, then the rest of blockchain is the ocean it illuminates. Bitcoin may be the first great monument built upon blockchain, but it is not the only one. Once developers and entrepreneurs witnessed its resilience, creativity exploded. If Bitcoin proved that blockchain could store and transfer value, the next logical question appeared like a spark. What else can we build with this technology? The answer arrived through waves of innovation: altcoins, smart contracts, decentralized finance, NFTs, supply chain networks, digital identity systems, and more. Not all succeeded. Many failed. But each taught us something about blockchain's strengths and its limitations. The first major evolution after Bitcoin was Ethereum. Launched in 2015 by the young visionary Vitalik Buterin and his team, Ethereum extended blockchain beyond simple transactions. It allowed developers to write code that executes automatically when conditions are met: smart contracts. This changed everything. Blockchain was no longer just a ledger, it became a computer. Programs could run without servers, without companies, without middlemen. Decentralized applications, dApps, were born. Vision imagined marketplaces, games, lending platforms, governance systems, all operating autonomously. With smart contracts came a new era: decentralized finance, or DeFi. Lending, borrowing, trading, yield farming, services traditionally managed by banks became open protocols running on blockchain. No bank manager, no approval process. A person in Nigeria could borrow from a pool of liquidity funded by someone in Canada. Value moved frictionlessly. It felt like a glimpse into a parallel financial universe where anyone could participate simply by owning a crypto wallet. But innovation is rarely smooth. DeFi brought opportunity, but also chaos. Smart contract bugs drained millions overnight. Protocols collapsed. Some projects were built on hype rather than utility. And when the hype faded, they vanished. The concept of decentralization proved powerful but fragile when profit motives overshadowed caution. It became clear that blockchain's promise required not only technology, but responsibility, security audits, governance, economic design. Then came NFTs, non-fungible tokens. For the first time, blockchain offered a way to verify digital ownership of art, music, collectibles. A JPEG could be unique. A song file could be provably scarce. Artists who once struggled to monetize digital work suddenly found new freedom. NFT mania swept the world. Celebrities launched collections. Auction houses sold digital paintings for millions. People bought pixel avatars as identity badges, membership passes, and status symbols. It was new, electrifying, and controversial. Many dismissed NFTs as a bubble, and indeed, much of the early frenzy was unsustainable. Some projects lacked substance. Prices soared beyond reason. When markets cooled, skeptics declared NFTs dead. But beneath the noise lies a deeper truth. Blockchain enabled digital property ownership in a way never before possible. You don't have to love monkey pictures to see the significance. In the future, NFTs may represent real estate titles, academic diplomas, in-game assets in global virtual economies, licenses, medical records, anything requiring verified uniqueness. The first waves were loud, messy, experimental, but the foundation remains. Outside the crypto market, enterprises turn to blockchain for traceability and trust. Supply chain projects track food from farm to supermarket shelf, ensuring authenticity and reducing fraud. Pharmaceutical companies use blockchain to trace drugs, preventing dangerous counterfeits. Luxury brands authenticate products with on-chain certificates. Governments experiment with blockchain-based voting to reduce fraud and increase transparency. Identity systems are emerging that allow people to own their digital profiles instead of surrendering them to corporations. Blockchain isn't only speculation, it is infrastructure. And yet, despite all this growth, something becomes clear. While many blockchain applications are compelling, few have achieved the durability or cultural trust of Bitcoin. Why? Several reasons emerge. Bitcoin is simple. It has one job: store value securely, and it does it exceptionally well. It doesn't try to be everything. Many newer projects chase speed, features, programmability, but complexity introduces risks: hacks, exploits, governance failures. Bitcoin avoids these traps by staying narrow and conservative. It updates slowly, cautiously. In a world obsessed with acceleration, Bitcoin practices patience. Another reason: incentives. Bitcoin miners are rewarded for securing the network with real economic value. Attackers must spend enormous resources to challenge it. This balance is delicate and hard to replicate. Many chains struggle to achieve similar decentralization and economic robustness. Finally, culture. Bitcoin is more than technology. It is ideology, a symbol of financial freedom, a hedge against inflation, a protest against centralized power. Bitcoin communities endure bear markets because their belief is long-term. Some altcoin communities exist primarily for profit, and when price falls, interest vanishes. Culture sustains networks more than code alone. This isn't to say other projects lack merit. Ethereum expanded what blockchain could do. Layer 2 networks attempt to scale. Projects like Solana push speed. Cardano emphasizes research. Polkadot explores interoperability. Chainlink connects data to blockchains. Many may survive, evolve, and shape the future, but none yet have matched Bitcoin's proof of permanence. There is an irony here. Blockchain was supposed to democratize innovation, but success demands what Bitcoin uniquely achieved: decentralization with security, scarcity with trust, community with purpose. Many projects compromise one pillar to strengthen another. Some trade decentralization for speed, others trade security for flexibility. Bitcoin keeps its foundation unmoved, even when the world expects evolution. This discipline is uncommon in tech, and perhaps why Bitcoin endures. So where does this leave us? Blockchain is expanding, diversifying, experimenting. It touches art, finance, logistics, identity. Ideas rise, fall, and rise again. Innovation continues. Mistakes teach. Success inspires. But when we measure real-world proof, not white papers, not promises, we return to the beginning. Bitcoin stands as the longest-running, most secure, most battle-tested demonstration of blockchain technology. It is not the only example, but it is the benchmark, the lighthouse in a storm of innovation and speculation. And that brings us to the final chapter: personal reflection. Beyond the technology, beyond the economics and development, what does all this mean on a human level? Why does it matter? What does Bitcoin represent for the future? When I first encountered Bitcoin, it was nothing more than a strange concept floating around in tech corners on the internet. People were talking about digital money created by computers, governed by no bank, no authority, just code and consensus. At that time, it sounded almost unreal, like something built for a sci-fi novel rather than real economies. I was intrigued, but also skeptical. How could a currency with no physical form hold value? How could strangers around the world agree on something so abstract without someone in charge? It took me years to understand that the answer wasn't just currency. It was trust, technology, and philosophy converging into one idea. Over time, I began to realize that Bitcoin wasn't merely an investment people gambled on, nor simply a token with fluctuating charts. To me, it became a living proof that humanity can agree on value without coercion, that rules can exist without rulers, and that transparency can replace blind trust. Bitcoin was the first system I ever saw where math became a guardian, where incentives replaced force, and where participation was voluntary yet powerful enough to sustain a global network. In that realization, something changed inside me. I understood that Bitcoin was not trying to destroy the financial system. It was offering an alternative, a mirror held up to the world asking us whether we truly understand what money is. Blockchain as a technology is brilliant, no doubt about it. It is like a canvas, wide and blank, waiting for creators to build upon. Companies can use it for supply chains, hospitals for medical records, governments for identity systems, artists for ownership rights. But Bitcoin, in contrast, is like the famous painting that brought attention to the canvas itself. Without Bitcoin, blockchain might have remained a technical idea in research papers discussed by computer scientists and cryptographers over coffee. Bitcoin carried blockchain beyond labs and conferences, into headlines, into policy discussions, into living rooms. It was Bitcoin that made ordinary people ask, what is money? Why does it hold value? Who controls it? That curiosity alone was revolutionary. Sometimes I think about Satoshi Nakamoto, a figure who appeared briefly like a shadow and then vanished, leaving behind a creation that no longer belongs to him or her or them. Satoshi gave the world the blueprint, but never stayed to watch what it became. There is something poetic about that. In a world where founders seek fame, Bitcoin's creator sought invisibility. No face, no leader, no company. Just code, mined into existence block by block until thousands, then millions, then entire institutions joined in. In that anonymity lies a message. The idea is bigger than the person. The system is more important than the inventor. Bitcoin does not ask us to trust Satoshi. It asks us to trust mathematics and collective agreement. I've watched people misunderstand Bitcoin, dismiss it as speculation, call it a bubble, a scam, a digital illusion. And yet, year after year, block after block, it refuses to die. Governments have tried to restrict it, banks have warned against it, critics have predicted its end countless times. But every time Bitcoin falls, it rises again. Not because someone saved it, but because no one needs to. Bitcoin survives because someone, somewhere, still believes that decentralization matters, that digital scarcity matters, that an open monetary network free from political influence is worth defending. In that sense, Bitcoin is not just technology. It is stubborn hope. Of course, Bitcoin is not perfect, and I don't pretend it is. It is slow compared to modern blockchains, expensive during congestion, and often misunderstood. It will not solve every problem nor replace every currency, but perfection was never the point. Reliability was. Predictability was. A system that changes too easily can be manipulated. Bitcoin's resistance to change is both its shield and its burden. It teaches us patience in a world of constant upgrade culture. It forces us to value stability over novelty. While the blockchain world evolves rapidly, smart contracts, NFTs, new consensus mechanisms, Bitcoin stands like a lighthouse, unchanged, unshaken, reminding us that sometimes reliability matters more than innovation. To me, blockchain will continue branching into the unknown, shaping industries we haven't imagined yet. But if one day someone asks what proved blockchain to the world, what gave it meaning beyond theories and prototypes, I will still answer without hesitation: Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is the first proof that decentralized trust can work at scale, that strangers can secure a network with no overlord, that value can exist without permission. It is the longest-running experiment of human cooperation across borders, time zones, and ideologies, maintained not by authority, but by incentives. Sometimes late at night, I watch the blockchain tick, a new block mined, another 10 minutes etched forever into history, and I feel something almost emotional. It's like watching a heartbeat of a new kind of organism, one that belongs to no nation, no corporation, no person. The world can ignore Bitcoin, ban it, criticize it, but it continues, quietly, relentlessly. A network that never sleeps, never asks for permission, never bends to power. There's beauty in that resilience. In the end, my belief is simple. Blockchain may create countless innovations in the future, but Bitcoin is the proof that made us believe. It is the first chapter of a story still being written, not by one author, but by millions of participants worldwide. Whether Bitcoin becomes global reserve money or remains digital gold, its legacy is already secured. It changed the way we think about ownership, trust, and freedom. It showed us what happens when code becomes law, when consensus becomes strength. And for me, that is worth far more than price charts or market speculation. Bitcoin made the invisible visible. It made the question of money personal. It forced me, and all of us, to rethink the foundation of value itself. And whether one chooses to invest in it or not, whether one loves it or doubts it, the truth remains. Bitcoin is the most successful proof of blockchain we have ever seen. And in that success lies a promise that technology can reshape systems once thought immutable, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions start quietly, with a block, a timestamp, and an idea shared with the world.